Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Today, the materials we're going to present are going to provide you not only with some information, but also with a demonstration as to why you would benefit from using Komprise and IBM Cloud Object Storage in your data centers. Specifically, this presentation will provide you with a base level of understanding of a beneficial data mobility landscape. In this presentation, we will cover the use of Komprise and IBM Cloud Object Storage from the point of view of how it can be used to drive cost out of your operations. In today's time frame, if you will, everything that's going on, cost accounting is very, very important. This is not a presentation about speeds and feeds or specific features of our object storage or specifically of all the benefits of Komprise because of the limited time, so we encourage you to follow up. But I would like to say that IBM Cloud Object Storage as well as Komprise both have a long list of awards. You know, IBM Cloud Object Storage has been around for a while. It was acquired by IBM and it was used to deploy into the IBM Cloud. We're going to talk about some of the benefits of this because it does have a distinct advantage in the industry. So looking at this slide, you know, the use of a hybrid cloud is not new. We at IBM have been sharing this idea for over a year now, probably closer to 2 years, that there is a rapid industry transition underway. I myself like to simplify things, and I tend to look at this slide as saying, okay, it absolutely makes sense that using multiple clouds makes sense, whether it's on-premise, whether it's you know, our cloud, a competitor's cloud. If you look at it, the hyperscalers, the cloud offerings, really what they're doing is providing you data center capabilities. So you're going to go wherever you need to go based on the importance of what you're trying to accomplish. So in other words, you know, you're going to look at this thing as to what's your overall data center strategy and what data center technologies do I need and where can I go to get them. So everybody has challenges. Myself, like I said, I like to simplify things, but once again, we see here that you're trying to meet your traditional SLAs, and that's not always an easy thing to do, especially when you start going externally. But one of the overriding facts that we see, or I should say common themes, is the fact to cut infrastructure costs. And that is the very powerful benefit that you're going to see moving forward here in this presentation that you can achieve with the combination of IBM Cloud Object Storage and Komprise. So this is the view of IT for a contemporary CIO, CTO. It is a data-driven hybrid multi-cloud world. It's interconnected, it provides data mobility, it supports multiple access capabilities as well as security, and it has to support compliance. One of the things that we cannot forget or we cannot minimize is security and compliance. The IBM storage has the critical attributes to support this environment, whether it's on-premise with NVMe-based storage, or whether it's in our cloud with IBM Cloud Object Storage, or whether it's in somebody else's cloud because it has the capabilities that you actually need. Our cloud is secure to the core to enable both, you know, day one, day two, et cetera, operations and be able to manage them comfortably, if you will. It can also provide the key underpinnings for adopting containers, modernization, and applications. So one of the things to consider is in your migration to the cloud is that the cloud is more than just storage, it's more than just compute, it's how you do that. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Krishna, and she's going to take you further down the journey of learning about IBM Cloud and Komprise.
Perfect, Bruce. Thank you. And, you know, I thought it would be great for us to share a customer story and the journey that they went through And this is a joint customer that Komprise and IBM have. It's a big insurance company that is headquartered in Spain. And the problem that they ran into is very similar to some of the things that we see across different customers. They wanted to go to more of a cloud-first strategy, and they also wanted to modernize their backup because their backup windows were taking too long and their backups were too expensive. They could have gone and just tried to buy a backup solution, and they did look at that, but it was very costly. And what IBM proposed to them was a archive and then backup approach. So what we did is Komprise went in and analyzed all the data they currently had. We found that over 60% of their data was cold and didn't need to be backed up regularly. So we archived that data, meaning we moved it into IBM Cloud Object Storage running on the IBM Cloud. And by doing that, we not only saved 60% of storage costs, but we also were able to save the backup costs on that data. And with those savings, they were actually able to get the full IBM Spectrum Protect suite with a flash storage for it for good restores. And so with the same budget that they had, they were able to archive data first by taking cold data out of the actively managed footprint and move to a better backup solution with better hardware at the same or even slightly lower cost. I think they estimated $500,000 savings on their NAS environment with this change. And I thought that was a great example to start with. I don't know, Bruce, if there's anything you want to add on that front, but it's very similar to the situations we see at a lot of other customers.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'd like to say two things. First of all, it's the combination of IBM Cloud Object Storage as well as Komprise. I mean, the first thing, Komprise provided the capability to do the analysis, to know how much data of what kind you're actually working with. And it showed that there definitely is definitely room for optimization. Adding that to IBM Cloud Object Storage by itself is also cost effective. You end up saving money to fund the project, which entailed being able to modernize that part of their operation and benefit. So yeah, this was a great story to share.
Yep. And we will share more customer stories as we go along. And as Kylie mentioned, the whole point of a live webinar is that it can be interactive. So we appreciate all the questions that you have. Feel free to type them in the chat window anytime, and we will be answering the questions throughout and at the end. One of the key things we're going to do today is actually show you a live demonstration of how Komprise and IBM work together. So we're going to show you the following things. We're going to show you exactly as Bruce said, how we can analyze and assess what you have in your environment and exactly how much you can save. And we're going to show you how you can do that on any storage that you have for file and object data. So whether it's your on-premise NAS environment, or maybe you have some data now in cloud, in other public clouds, whether it's NAS or object, we'll show you how you can analyze across all of those environments and see where you can be more efficient. And then we'll show you how we create that data mobility, how we can do data archiving transparently, as well as data migrations. We will show all this in the demo. And as we're doing all these things, we also create an index of all the data. So now you have a data lake across all your silos. So you can search and find data no matter where it lives. And we'll show that also in the demo. And we'll show you how you can use the IBM Cloud not only to archive data into it or migrate data into it, but also as a way to protect your data and create a cyber resiliency copy. IBM Cloud Object Storage has the ability to create a worm copy, meaning that the copy doesn't get changed once it's written. And Komprise leverages that so you can create an air-gapped copy of your data if you need it. Especially in today's world, people are interested in that data protection element. So we'll talk about that as well, and we'll show you how you can access the moved data. So these are the things we're going to actually show you now in the live demonstration. And before I go into the demo, the one thing I wanted to highlight is exactly how we save money for customers. Because this, I know, is top of mind for everybody. And we're going to highlight this with an actual customer that we have together. This is one of the top 5 financial insurance companies in the world. They're a global insurance company that uses IBM and Komprise. And what I'm showing you here is a 3-year return on investment and 3-year cost savings that this customer has seen by using our joint solution. They have 2 petabytes of file data, and that's the data that we are managing. And of that data, they, being a financial institution, they wanted to be more careful. Even though 70% of their data hasn't been touched in a year or more, they're actually moving 50% of it into the IBM cloud. So 50% of their data still is on the NAS, on their network attached storage, because it's more active data, and 50% of the data is this little yellow and gray sliver. That's the part that moved to the cloud. What we're showing you here is the cost of the original data and the moved data after the move in year 1, year 2, and year 3. So this is the original cost, for year 1, year 2, and year 3. You can see that if you do nothing, the NAS cost just keeps going up. But when we took that 50% of cold data and we moved it into IBM Cos, the yellow part is the cost of IBM, and the gray sliver on top of it is the cost of Komprise. And you buy both products through IBM. So you buy Komprise also through IBM. But with that, you can see that this customer was able to save $6.9 million over 3 years, because as the data grew, their savings also grew proportionately. And the reason the savings are so significant is because we're not only saving on storage, but we're also saving on the backup and DR costs on that cold data. And I'm going to show all that to you through the live demonstration. Okay? So with that backdrop, let me actually switch into the demo. You should be able to see my screen. And what I'm showing you here is the Komprise Director Console. So let's say after this meeting, you want to see how much savings you can get in your own environment. If you want to do that, all you do is contact your IBM rep, and we will set you up with this console. We can do an assessment in your environment, and basically all we will do is, once we bring this up, there's a virtual machine that we download into your data center, and with that, you can start connecting to all your storage. So here, I'm going to first connect to all my file storage. So anything that presents data as NFS or SMB is what I'm looking at. You can see I'm connected to some isolons in this environment. These are EMC isolons. I'm connected to some NetApp filers. I'm even connected to some Windows servers, etc. So you just point at the storage. You have Komprise discover the shares. Komprise finds both the NFS and SMB exports. You pick the ones that you want to look at, and then you're ready to go. Once you do that, Komprise starts giving you analytics on your data. So the first thing you see is this kind of heat map of all your data. So the more blue this is, the colder the data is. And what we mean by cold data is this is data that nobody has, accessed or changed in a year or more. So we can see that 25% of the data in this environment hasn't been touched in a year or longer. And if you look at 2 to 3 years, that's another 12.8%, and then over 3 years, another 12% or so. So this entire half of this wheel is data that nobody has touched in a year or longer. So that's data that you really do not want to keep on your expensive NAS. You want to offload it from your expensive NAS. And somebody actually just asked a question, is the cost savings only a result of not having to buy additional NAS when you offload to Cos? And no, the cost savings is not only from buying the NAS, that is a part of it. But when we take this cold data and we offload it or archive it into IBM Cos, those files are removed from the original NAS and replaced with a small link so that users still see it as if it's in the original place. I'll show that in the demo. But when we do that, the backup that's running on the NAS is not backing up the whole file anymore. It's just backing up that link. So the savings you get is not only on the storage, but also on the backup and the DR. So you can see here that Komprise is projecting, based on all the analysis, in this environment is about an $8.8 million savings, and the storage that's freed is 2 petabytes, but backup and DR is about 3 times that. And of course, all the costs in this model, you can actually edit it and put your own costs. So it is not just some cost that we're coming up with. You can change this to your own costs. And if you're looking at data on a hyperscaler, we actually get the costs from that environment directly from your billing APIs, so the costs are accurate to what you see. And I'll show you that as well. But not only can you see this analysis, but you get a lot of other information that normally IT doesn't have on the data, like how fast is this data growing? What does the data look like? What kinds of files are they? You can see there's a lot of video files in this environment. Is it big files or small files? Sorry, I'm just moving my mouse. Big files or small files? Who owns the data, which users, which groups, etc. You can see a lot of valuable analytics, and you can then drill down into this. I'm looking at this across all my shares, but I could look at just shares owned by engineering or just shares owned by finance, etc., to get a better understanding. And as I see this analysis, I can also now set my policies. And as I change the policies, Komprise will change the projections. So for example, in this here, I'm saying that, this is a media and entertainment environment, and for post-production data, anything over a year old, I want to move it to IBM Cloud. I could be more aggressive. I could say, well, once production is done, after 3 months, I could actually move it to the cloud, or after 6 months. And watch as I change this. I don't know if you saw, but the savings went up to 10 million from 8 million. So it dynamically calculates what the savings are going to be based on my own policies. And not only can I archive or move cold files, I can also put a copy of data into the IBM cloud or into any cloud I want, for that cyber resiliency. And if there are some obsolete data that should no longer be there, I could even confine it for deletion. I could do all of that, okay? So once you set all these policies and you're happy with it, all you have to do is say activate, and then Komprise will actually move the data based on your policies. So you can archive cold data, you can replicate or copy data, and you can confine or delete data. And you can set all those policies for your different policy groups, and based on your policies, Komprise will take action. There was a question, assume a client has moved to a new NAS infrastructure 6 months ago and has migrated all their active and inactive data to the new NAS. Would a migration process trigger move data as active since it was moved 6 months earlier, even though it was used a while back? No, a migration should not trigger a change of access times. if it's done correctly. For example, if you use Komprise to do migrations, if you migration is when you take everything from one environment and move it to another environment. If you migrate data from one environment to another, access times should not get changed. Access time is when users are opening the data, and those should get preserved. And by the way, the same is true for a backup application as well. You could have backups running on your data, and they will not change the access time. So these access times are when users have opened the data and when users have used the data. Okay? Great questions, though. This kind of interactivity is awesome. So we'll continue to monitor your questions. Once you set all these policies and you start moving data, I just want to show you what the experience of the moved data looks like. And then I'll come back into this demo and show you more of the UI itself. So let me actually just open up a folder where I have some files that Komprise has been running on. I'm showing you a folder here, and this folder, I hope you can see it okay on BrightTalk. But it has a bunch of files, and I don't know if you can really see it, but some of these files have been archived by Komprise into IBM Cos, and they still show up here. So even though they're sitting in IBM Cos, I can see it in my original directory as if they're still here, and they look just like the original file, and I just have to double-click it, and it opens exactly as my files did before I archived them. So this is what we call transparent archiving. Komprise has a patented technology called transparent move technology that does this. And the reason this is very unique is because users don't really have to know that some data got archived. Users don't have to go and mark things to be archived. They don't have to go look in a second place. They don't have to know that you're using an object storage behind file storage. They don't need to worry about any of that. They just are using their data as they always will, and IT is managing data behind the scenes, and it's completely transparent to them. And so that's the value of this approach. It helps you manage data at scale and helps you get this kind of efficiency in a way that's independent of whatever storage you're using, whatever backup you're using, and independent of your cloud environments as well, because it's a standards-based way to move the data. Okay, that's what's unique about this. And as we move the data, as I mentioned before, we're also indexing all the data, so you can find data based on any combination of metadata. So in a way, we're actually building a virtual data lake of all your data. And this is useful because if on the IBM Cloud, if you want to do more things like big data analysis of your data sets and you want to find a particular data set, for example, let's say you want to find everything tagged as Project X across all your storage, and you want to move that to IBM Cloud because you want to do some analysis on it, you can just search for Project X tag. And here I'm looking at a Project X, anything that was accessed over 3 years ago, and I can see that, it's sitting in different shares. There's different storage that this data is on, but I'm getting one view of all that data. So I can see all the files that belong to this query, even though there are different owners, even though they're different sizes, even though they're sitting in different locations. So I've actually built a virtual data lake now across all my data. And this virtual data lake you can not only use inside Komprise, but through an API, you can export this entire data set and use it outside as well. Okay? The one other thing I want to show you in the demo is, that analysis that I showed you here, I pointed at a lot of file storage to see this analysis, but I could have pointed at storage on a hyperscaler as well. If you are looking at, should you move some data from a hyperscaler into IBM, for example, you can actually analyze data across your clouds and see the same kind of analysis that I showed you on files, it's also available now from Komprise on objects. So here I'm showing you that there are all these objects. I've pointed at my Amazon and Azure and Wasabi clouds. I can point at any public cloud. These are the three we support right now for you to look at. And then you can look at the data there. And again, you can get data based on when users accessed it. You can see cost savings, and these costs are based on billing APIs with each of these clouds. So this is actual cost savings you will get by moving this data into IBM Cloud. So you can get this kind of analysis on all your unstructured data, on both your object data as well as your file data, and you can manage both of those in one environment. Kylie, are there any other? I know there are a lot of questions that kept coming in. Were there any others that are related to the demo that we should answer now, or should we wait till the end?
Let's answer this one. That was a two-part question. They said, in other words, what is it that makes data, quote, active? How many, quote, hits on that data need to be counted to change its status in Komprise?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is based on, here the analysis I'm looking at, you can look at it based on last access or last modified. I'm looking based on last access because that's what people usually like to use. It's the most accurate. And last access simply means somebody actually opened the file the last time, okay? So it doesn't have to be that they opened it many times. As long as someone opened it even like a year ago, it would show up on this side of the graph. So what this is saying is all this data on this side, like 55% plus of the data in this environment, nobody has even opened it once in a year or longer. That's what it's showing. And by the way, guys, this is not at all surprising. What we find across our customers is, on average, 76% of the data that they have has not been opened by anybody in a year or more. That's what we find on average in most environments. And it's kind of intuitive if you just think about it. If you think about your own phone and all the pictures you take on it, how often do you open and see every photo that you took on your phone? If you're like me, probably not that often, right? But you really don't delete them either because you think one day you may need them. And that's what we do with data. As users, we tend to hoard data. We create data. We find it useful for some time. And it's not that it doesn't have value after that. It's just not actively used, within 6 months or longer of its creation. So anytime it's opened, it will show up on here, okay? Okay, so I'm going to move on with the presentation. We'll come back and take more questions because there are quite a few questions that came up, but just in the interest of time, I want to make sure we covered the IBM Cloud Object Storage side as well, and then we'll come back and answer the questions. Bruce, do you want to talk about, why IBM Cloud Object Storage?
Just try and stop me. Yes, I do. So why IBM Cloud Object Storage? Top of mind is economics. So if you look at the screen, and I'm going to apologize, but this looks like a typical marketing screen where there's just some wild numbers thrown out there that really either involve cases that are not applicable but can be, shown to exist. These are actual real numbers. So why is this true? Because IBM actually deployed a modern technology. Isn't that part of the mantras of the data center, or of the cloud, if you will, modernize using the cloud? So what our competitors have done, which is the right thing to do based on older technology and older models, is they use a combination of replication and networking. And that's kind of the older way to do it. With IBM Cloud Object Storage, it's based on erasure coding and geodispersion. Now, this could be 45 minutes all by itself, but rest assured there's plenty of information out there as to how we work, and let it suffice to say that it's extremely efficient. It's efficient from the point that we do things in the same way, whether you spread across racks in a single data center because you want everything located in a single location for maybe, what do you call it, having to meet legal requirements for the industry that you're in or borders for the country that you're in. We also provide the capability to spread things, say, across North America or across Europe, so that you could be in, for example, have your data in San Jose, you could have your part of it in Dallas, and the other part, if you will, in the East Coast in Washington area. Why would that be beneficial? Well, because if something happens in any one of those locations, you now have the farthest geo-dispersion available, and even if a complete data center goes offline, the way the software actually works and is deployed is providing you the capability to still access your data and stay online. So if anybody's interested in any of these numbers, I'd be more than happy to take the time and work with you on your own case and show you why these numbers are actually valid. So let's take a look at some of the benefits that some of our customers have actually received. So the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, everybody's familiar with all the data-intensive applications that medical centers use. And, you know, we all go in, just going to the doctor, there's always paperwork. They have to keep that paperwork. We know about HIPAA. They have to protect your rights to privacy with that paperwork and everything else. So it becomes very, very data intensive. So the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center was able to grow their primary storage environment from about 600 terabytes to nearly 15 petabytes. And here's the interesting thing. They did not have to increase their headcount of the storage team. And that represents like a 2,400% growth. Try doing that with just on-premise storage. Now, I do have to say one thing here. We're talking about IBM Cloud Object Storage. IBM does make this technology available for on-premise. So if you happen to be in one of those industries where you really feel you need to control everything within the confines of your own data center, it is available, and you can have the exact same capabilities and all the functionality that that was being talked about, such as the worm capability. It is all there. Another one in the financial services industry, if you will, they saved, $6.9 million in 3 years. They used Komprise just as Krishna described it. They analyzed all their data, and they found that 65% of their data was cold, not touched in greater than a year. So they were able to pull out $6.9 million of savings in over 3 years, which represented to them a 42% cost reduction. So the combination of these two technologies is very real and very economically viable. Krishna, you want to add anything?
No, I think you've covered it, Bruce. I think we gave a good overview of all the different use cases. I do see there were lots of questions, so maybe, we can also start answering the questions. I don't know if there's another slide after this,
no.
But we could, yeah.
So I'll take one of the questions. This is one of my favorites, if you will. So in other words, can I use Komprise and use multiple vendors? So the exact question was, using Komprise, can I archive cold data into any other cloud vendor like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or does it just support IBM Cloud? The answer is it supports all of the above. And if that's what makes sense to you, you have a very powerful data mobility tool with Komprise to be able to take advantage of what you feel fits your requirements best. Although there are benefits with IBM Cloud, as I stated previously.
That's great, Bruce. Thanks. Kylie, do you want to kind of read off some of the other questions?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you said Komprise creates a link for each file it moves to IBM Cos so that in the NAS it will not take space. What will Komprise do when a client wants to change the cloud provider at a later stage?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you absolutely can change the cloud provider at a later stage. Basically, the way Komprise works is everything we do is standards-based. And when we move data, we're moving it in native format everywhere. So what that means is that when we take a file and we're archiving it into, let's say, IBM Cloud Object Storage, we're keeping the entire file as an object on IBM Cloud Object Storage along with its metadata. And then putting the link, which is a standard link, we're not putting anything proprietary on the original NAS. If it were a NetApp, that's where we would put that link. And let's say tomorrow you want to go from the on-premise IBM Cos to IBM Cloud, or you want to go to AWS, that object we will move, and the link doesn't actually have to change. It's completely transparent. So yeah, you can change your provider at any point. You can also access your data directly from the IBM Cloud or from any of the clouds we move data to without going through Komprise and without going through your original NAS. So there is no lock-in to your data. As Bruce said, we want to do what's right for you, whatever storage makes sense for you, and whatever access makes sense for you. This is really a no lock-in solution from IBM and Komprise.
Awesome. Okay, it looks like we have time for just another question or two. Could you elaborate more on the use of tags and what the benefits are of using tags on data to users?
Yes. So basically, tags are a way to augment the metadata that's normally available on files. There's some standard metadata that you get on a file, like who's the owner, who last opened it, when was it last opened, when was it modified, where is it sitting, what is the access control, etc. That's standard metadata. But you may know a lot more about that data than the file system does, right? Or in an object environment, that's one of the benefits of object storage. You actually can put all kinds of tags on your data. For example, if you know this data is related to a particular movie project and you want to put that movie project's name, or you want to classify your data in any way. Many industries, especially like healthcare, they're going through data classification schemes now. All those classification tags you can just add to your data with that deep analytics that I showed you in Komprise. And the beauty of doing that is, as the data moves around, let's say we're moving the data from an EMC Isilon into IBM Cos, as we move the data around, we keep all the tags, we preserve all that information, so you can search and find the data you want at any time. So it's a way to extend how you can search and extract value from your data.
Perfect. Okay, it looks like we are about out of time here. If we didn't get to your questions today, we will be sure to follow up with you and answer. There are some great questions that we received today. So thank you, Krishna and Bruce, for presenting today, and thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Goodbye, everyone.